up in northern Kansas.
Okay, today is October 2nd, 1984. And this is Joe Todd and Bernice Jackson. And we're interviewing Mr. What's your first name, sir?
Leonard.
Leonard Sample. Sir, where were you born?
12 miles southwest of here.
And when's your birthday?
November 28th, 1905.
1905. Who is your father?
Charlie Gilbert Sample.
And your mother?
Mabel May Mix.
Where were they from?
They lived right out there. Granddad homesteaded out there. And that's where Dad met my mother. They was only about 2.5 miles apart.
Where was the homestead?
Well, it's 12 miles southwest of here.
Did he stake that? Did he make the run?
No, he homesteaded in 1900.
1900.
I think it was February.
Yeah. On a relinquishment?
Did what?
Relinquishment? When someone gives up their claim and leaves?
No, he was the original. Filed on it.
Were any of your grandfathers in the Civil War?
Not that I know of.
What kind of work did your father do?
Farm.
Farmer? As a small boy, what chores did you do in the farm?
Well, just about everything there was to do. Milking and feeding the hogs, feeding the cattle, feeding, taking care of them chickens, all of that kind of stuff.
Where'd you start school?
West Union, 8 miles out from here.
Who was your teacher?
First teacher was Minnie Clifford.
How big was the school?
Well, to start with, it was only a one-room schoolhouse, but they added another room about the time I started school. There's 2 rooms, there's 2 teachers, and about somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 or 75 kids going to school.
How many years you go to school?
I finished 8th grade out there and came to Freedom and graduated from high school.
Do you remember World War I?
Yeah, just a little bit, not too much.
18. Did the schools have any organized effort to help the war effort?
I don't remember of any.
What about Armistice Day?
Everybody observed Armistice Day.
Remember that first one, November 11th,
Oh,
1918?
not too much about it.
I was talking to one guy, and they had what they call shooting the anvils.
I don't remember anything special there at school that day. If it was school day, that I can't remember.
Yeah. What are your first memories of freedom?
What was what?
Your first memories of the town here?
Oh, you say what was?
Yeah.
First time that I ever went to barber to get a haircut.
Tell us about that.
Well, there was 2 barbers in the shop. The main one was raised right out close to where I was raised, about a mile apart. We came to Freedom in Dad and I came to Freedom in a wagon, team of horses. Forded the river down west of Freedom. But that's about the only thing I can remember of. But that's my first barber haircut.
What kind of wagon did your father have? What brand?
Now you got me.
Can you tell us what kind of maintenance you had to do on it?
They wasn't very much. Mostly greasing it.
Greasing it. What part?
The wheels.
The wheels and axles?
Yeah.
Was spring wagon?
No.
No.
He had a spring wagon when he came to Oklahoma to homestead. He had a spring wagon, and I don't know for sure. I think 4 driving horses, a driving team.
Mm-hmm. Where did he come from to Oklahoma?
Northern Kansas, Jewell County, Kansas.
Mm-hmm. And they came here in 1900?
Dad did.
Yeah. You said that you forded the river down here. Was this a treacherous river to ford?
It always was.
Tell us about what precautions did you have to take on fording the river?
Well, they wasn't much. At that time, I just drove into it and kept the team moving.
Mm-hmm.
It's quicksand.
Did you get stuck in quicksand?
And they'd one of my neighbors, one of my closest friends, his dad lost a wagon. It's still down there in the river somewhere. He managed to get his team of horses off of it. He was taking a load of coal home from Freedom in a wagon. I don't know, never knew why, what caused him to get stuck, but anyway, the wagon sank. That he managed to get his horses loose and got out.
Someone told me that this is not the original location of the town of Freedom. It was moved here.
It was moved. It was 5 miles north and a half mile east of where the town originally was. That I don't know very much about that. Only from hearsay.
How come they moved the town here?
On account of the railroad.
Tell us about the history of the town. Who settled the town? Why did they call it Freedom?
Well, it was New Freedom. That and up there was Old Freedom. That's the reason that they called it Freedom.
Why did they call it Freedom in the first place?
That I don't know. You'd have to ask some older people that lived up in that part of the country, and then not many of them left.
Who were some of the original founders of New Freedom?
You mean the families that moved down there?
Yeah.
Well, there was one fellow by the name of Winningham, opened a grocery store, and a fellow by the name of Ed Nash opened a hardware. There was another grocery store, but I can't think right off what the people's name was. I know if I could think of it. I never was acquainted with them, however.
Have you always been a farmer?
I left the farm in about 1927.
How come you left the farm?
Hay fever and asthma. Couldn't take it.
Did you move into town?
I moved right here where this house is. There's another old house here.
Yeah. What'd you do after you moved into town? What kind of work?
Oh, I worked at road work some. And in 1929, a fellow from Buffalo put in a light plant here. I worked at the light plant for 12 years. I was there the day that it started, and I shut it off the last time it run.
What were your duties?
Just taking care of the equipment, motor and generator, such as that.
Was it natural gas?
No. It was diesel. Well, it was I can't think what to call it. Fairbanks Morris engine, burnt fuel oil.
How many people did you service?
I'd just have to guess at that. I'd say at least 75 in the business houses. Worked 12 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for $50 a month. Figured out 14 cents an hour on a 30-day month. 31 days, it didn't make quite 14 cents. Sure got to them in February, though. We got $50 a month. There's an old man and I worked there. We got our electricity furnished, but we wasn't getting enough to buy any appliances to use anything, you might say, but lights. Nobody had any air conditioning of any kind. There wasn't such a thing then. A few had fans.
What about the Depression? How'd that affect you and your family?
Well, we lived on that $50 a month, family of 5 of us. Don't know how we did it. My wife, when I was working 12 hours, slept. We changed shifts every month, 4 o'clock to 4 o'clock. She washed and ironed my clothes while I was asleep. About once a week, wash them on a washboard by hand.
What kind of meals would your wife fix in those years?
Sir?
What kind of meals would your wife fix in those years?
Oh, just family meals. She I think, was a good cook.
Did you raise a lot of your food then?
I raised quite a little of it in the garden.
What about the dust storms?
They was kind of rough.
Tell me about them.
My wife's folks lived out in western Kansas. They moved out there. And just north of the railroad track, which is about 450 feet from here, there was a street light on that corner. My wife wrote to her mother and told her that we just barely could see there was a light there. Her mother wrote back and said they couldn't have seen a light. She went out to shut the chickens up when they saw one of those storms coming and got the general direction to turn and go back to the house, and she run into the house before she couldn't see it. So we decided we didn't have much dust. My boss that owned the light plant, him and a hardware man in here. The boss had a new Chevrolet car. He and his wife, and the hardware man and his wife, they wanted to see if it was actually out in the panhandle, what the reports were. They went out there one Sunday afternoon. He said they got caught in one out there and had to stop. He turned the lights on and he couldn't even tell that the lights were on that new Chevrolet. There was dust here. Oh, a lot of people would maybe wet a sheet, hang it up over a door to filter out the dust. I've done a lot of wiring in houses around the country. And I could get in the attic of every house that was here at that time and tell you whether they was here in the Dust Bowl days or whether they wasn't. Because there may be an inch of dust right up in there on the ceiling. People you can't imagine what it was unless you were in it.
How long would a dust storm last?
Oh, sometimes 2 or 3 days, sometimes 3 or 4 hours. You never knew when it was going to just start rolling in like this big cloud of dust rolling in. They was off and on for a long time.
What stopped the dust storm? The Dust Bowl, what ended it?
Well, some of the conservation practices that the government agriculture department financed and advocated, planting shelter belts and such as that. I don't know how in the world they ever got trees to grow because as dry as it was. But they did. Built ponds, all of that conservation practices.
What did you do during World War II?
hang up the light plant.
Did you have any drills during the war? Blackouts?
No.
Was there any work for the war effort around here? Bond drives, this type?
Oh, not really. Bond drives, I don't think. There's a lot of people bought bonds, saving stamps. Mostly the kids that buy the saving stamps. I think they was 25 cents a piece, if I remember.
You told me when we were visiting Mr. Sample about there was a family on every corner. That would be a thickly settled neighborhood out there where you were raised.
It was.
And what would the young people do on a Sunday afternoon for entertainment?
Well, we made our own. We'd get together, everybody rode horses in them days.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd be, well, it was only 3.5 miles from where I was raised, where I went to school. They had Sunday school and church up there. Everybody near in the country around for 6 or 8 miles went to Sunday school and church. All of us young bucks, boys and girls, rode horseback. Some of them didn't ride horseback, but they get on a horse with somebody else and ride two on a horse. One Sunday they'd go to my folks. Next Sunday some other family. Next one some other family. It'd be anywhere from 12 or 15 of us together every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
We made our own entertainment, and they had parties during the week. A lot of ice cream socials. Everybody brought, well, not everybody, but a lot of people bring a freezer of ice cream. And it just mixed up. It wasn't frozen.
Mm-hmm.
And 1 or 2 fellas go together and buy 500 or 600 pound ice. One fella bought a 5-gallon freezer for that purpose. And they'd go up to the schoolhouse, make ice cream, have an oyster supper, literary, just that kind of entertainment.
We've heard that word literary. What is the meaning of that, and how did it get started to be called?
I don't know the original of it. I could tell you what it consisted of.
Okay.
They'd have debates, and they had programs. Different ones would give the recitations. Some of them were singing songs. Just a program of that sort.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever get up a 3-act play or anything like that?
I didn't.
1-act play.
Some of the older ones did.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a 1-act play or something like that. Because it was more than just a play for entertainment. They'd get something short, and then there'd be maybe 15 or 20 in the congregation. Some kids would give a recitation. Some of them would sing a song.
It was fun.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. What games did you play at school?
Fox and goose in the wintertime when there's snow on. Black man, and as they line up, choose sides, line up, and 2 would be out in the middle to catch them as they come through, and they'd run from one base to the other, from one line to the other, till they all got caught. After when one got caught, but then he helped the first 2 that was out there, and then the next one helped the 3, and so on until it was all eliminated or give up. Had snowball fights in the wintertime.
Did you go ice skating on the river?
No. There wasn't any. I did have to move it over here. It wasn't on the river because it was too salty. It never freeze over.
Oh.
But there was a little lake right down here southwest of Freedom. The creek emptied in too, and it
Well, in 1918, when that flu epidemic went around, I can remember how we dreaded the flu. Did you folks have it real bad up there?
Not too bad. Coming or losing one sister with pneumonia.
Yes. Well, where I was raised, there was several died from the flu.
There's an old doctor here in Freedom. Now that was before I started coming to Freedom. At that time, Freedom was another country, as a foreign land.
Sure. There's a long ways to freedom, wasn't it?
Yeah. There was an old doctor here, and he had a garage man that drove him when he had to take him when he'd make house calls.
Yes.
He said he only lost one patient, and that was because the patient didn't obey his orders.
Yes.
He got up too soon and took a back set.
Nearly everybody that took a back set didn't make it.
Yeah.
That's what was the cause of their death.
Oh, there's been a lot of characters in this town.
Tell us about some of them.
All in fun.
Yes. Can you remember one particular incident?
Well, I'll just tell you one on me.
Okay.
Back in, it was in the 30s, I had a cow, he had plenty of milk, and I sold and peddled milk all over Freedom for 6 cents a quart. Went afoot. One evening we were a little short of milk bottles, so the wife wanted me to run up to the store and hardware and get some milk bottles. Well, that fellow that run it, he was an honest cuss, just in fun. I went in and I said, "Jim, you got any milk bottles?" "Yep." And I said, "How much are they?" He said, 8 cents a piece or 3 per quarter. I said, "Give me 3.
Oh.
Grabbed my 3 and started home, and I got right up here about a block north before I woke up, and I never went back. He got enough life out of it without him knowing that as far as I know, he died never knowing that I ever knew any better. They was 8 cents or 3 per quarter.
Yes.
But he was always pulling something like that on somebody. There was a whole bunch of them around here just the same way. Everybody had fun.
Oh, yes.
But it mostly made their own entertainment.
When was you and your wife married?
I stop and figure. I think it's 28. 54 years. The 19th of November, 3 years since she passed away. She passed away the next morning after our 54th anniversary.
Well.
Which would be 57, the 19th of November.
And you lived out on the farm when you were first married?
Lived right here.
You lived right here. You just brought your bride right home and been here ever since, huh?
We moved to 3 or 4 different small houses here in town. Finally got this one built. This was 2 rooms. It used to be a petition ranch through here, and we just had these 2 rooms. I built this 10-foot addition back here, practically all of it, with an extension cord and a light bulb after night.
Well, how many children did you have?
3. 2 girls and a boy. Both girls live right here in Freedom.
What are their names?
Ida Howland and Leona Broad. That's spelled B-R-A-D-T.
And your son, you say, live in Oregon?
In Renton, Washington.
Washington.
Just a suburb of Seattle. He works for Boeing south of Seattle. He worked right in Seattle for a while, but they transferred him down to this other plant.
What do you think the population of Freedom is now?
I would guess 450.
450.
They
You
do.
have a nice school here now.
We have a good school.
Have you got acquainted with the new superintendent?
Oh,
I hear he's doing real well with your school.
I think he is.
Has Freedom always had a high school?
Yes. The first high school was only one class, freshman class. Second year was freshman and sophomore. They just added a year until they got the 4-year.
I see.
How long you been rolling your own cigarettes?
Well, back in the 30s, I bought Bull Durham by the carton, 24 sacks for $1.25. That one cost me 57 cents.
You better not smoke too often.
Has that got anything in it?
Nope, this one's empty.
Well, I got one somewhere I tried to find a while ago and couldn't. I run out of cigarettes. I think there's another in here somewhere. It's got some in it. That's how much things have gone up. Bought them for a nickel a sack or 24 for $1.25. Now they're 57 cents.
Can you think of anything else that be interesting?
Oh, Freedom had a football team from the first year. I played on it the first football game I ever saw. I was in it.
Well, did you win?
Well, I don't remember whether they did the first one or not.
What year was that?
I believe it was 21.
What position did you play?
Guard, right guard. When they started the high school, there was several young fellas, and I think there were maybe 3 or 4 of the girls that were, well, some of the boys were 21 when they started high school. We had a good enough team one time. We beat Winoka 50-0.
Oh, that's a good record.
We told the coach before we went down there, we're going to beat them 50-0. He said, if you beat them 50-0, when you get dressed after the game, I head for the drugstore. It's on me. I don't have any idea what it cost him because he was a good sport. It wouldn't made any difference what it cost him. When he said it was on him, he just stayed with it. Oh, I had a lot of fun when I was going to high school. I took 5 years to make the grade. I had to do darn much fun. And I told them ever since then, if I'd known then what I'd do now, I'd have took 5 more.
Can you tell me how farming techniques have changed?
How what?
How farming techniques have changed?
Oh, used to do it all with horses. Some of them had my dad had a riding plow after I got big enough to do anything, but he had, when he first started there in 1900, it was all walking equipment. Walking cultivators, walking plows, walking sod plow. My first farming was one horse and what they called a 5-tooth. It had 5 shovels on it. They listed their feed, and then that left a ridge between the rows, and my job was to 5-tooth that ridge to work down around the feed in the rows. Then about 1925, Dad and 2 other fellows over there each got a combine and tractor. tractor was a 2-cylinder, and it wouldn't run worth a hoop till it got red hot. Noisy, dusty. Why, the young folks nowadays, they got air conditioners and closed-in cabs and all of that stuff. On combine and tractors. There wasn't any such thing then. You was right out in all that dust.
When you first started farming, how many acres could you plow in one day?
You done a pretty good day's work if you got 8. That's with a 2-bottom, what they call a 2-bottom plow. I had 2 plows fastened together.
What crops did you raise? What was your cash crop?
Well, there was some wheat, not a whole lot. They had maize, calf corn, federita. A lot of people raised broom corn. My dad never raised any broom corn until after I'd left home. He had 2 or 3 crops then. That was one thing. My granddad on my mother's side was a broom maker. That was his trade. Done it all by hand.
Mm-hmm. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
There was 9 of us kids in the family.
Well.
7 of them still alive.
Mm-hmm.
I lost 2 brothers.
Mm-hmm. Were you the oldest?
I'm the oldest one, and I've got a sister that was born in 1907. And I've got a brother living in his trailer home right west of me here that was the next one, and the next 2 is the ones that passed away.
Mm-hmm.
But all the rest of them, the youngest sister lives in Laverne.
And what's her name?
One in Laverne,
Mm-hmm.
Mary Mead.
Mary Mead.
Her husband is Raymond Mead. He worked for a gas company over there and read gas meter and stuff for a long time.
Yes.
He's working for some oil company over there now. Has for several years.
Well, that big a family, you all had to work, didn't you?
Everybody worked. Everybody had a job, too. I lost my dad in 1938. He was just like everybody else in the country, in debt for his land and everything that's on the place. Because there wasn't anybody getting enough money to, you might say, to put out another crop.
No, not in 38. Well, of course, that would be following the dust storms and the depression.
Yeah, my dad had a federal land bank loan on the place. He'd bought 2 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
He had a federal land bank on those 3 quarters for $7,900 and couldn't make the payments. After he passed away in March of 38, federal land bank people at Woodward just begged me to take that place over for $5,000.
Why didn't you do it?
I couldn't.
Oh, on account of your...
Well, working for 14 cents an hour, I couldn't buy any cattle or machinery or anything else. And it still looked hopeless. I had 1 wheat crop after that. Had 40 acres on a rented place out there that my dad had been farming. Made 10 bushels an acre.
Mm-hmm.
Brought it to Freedom and got 23 cents a bushel for it.
I believe that. We sold some for 25 cents. My folks did.
No, partly on account of the hay fever and asthma. But that place out there now beat 100,000.
Does it have any gas wells on it?
No.
No.
Got some not very far away though.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they've ever hit anything on it.
Is it still in the family?
No.
Mm-hmm.
No, one neighbor, young fella, bought it. I know he never got it for 5,000, but that's what they begged me to take it over at.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't do it.
Well, it sounds like life has been good to you.
Yeah, I can't complain.
Anything else that you can think of to tell
Oh, probably told too much now.
us? No, you haven't told us.
Well, I was started on the town board in 1937. I and two other fellows, none of us had ever been on the town board. There was a stretch in there of a few years that they didn't have anybody. Some of them just took it on themselves to go ahead and try to keep things going.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on the town board, and finally was the chairman of the board, and then I resigned and took the clerk's job. I worked for the town until I was 60, I don't know, about 68 or 70. I had to take care of everything. I was the only employee. Took care of the gas and water and sewer, stray dogs, you name it. It was my job.
Did you ever have a break-in or thieves coming, and did you ever have trouble with?
Oh, they've had two or three, three anyway, bank robberies.
That's what I thought.
Hardware was broke in 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
Drugstore. Well, it wasn't a drugstore really. Everybody called it a drugstore because that's what it started up as, a drugstore.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor that was running it passed away, and another fellow bought it, and he was a pharmacist in World War II. He was called to service, so yeah, there've been several break-ins, and some petty thievery, which would be everywhere.
Well, you didn't have any bad outlaws come through. And
No, but there was right about 4 or 5 miles up the river northwest. Bank robber, but he never got anything. I got something over here I want to show you. Bring it over. We've got one of the best open rodeos in the whole country, bar none.
well, let's see. There was a radio not too far from Freedom, just some ranch. Oh, that's great. Let's take a picture of that. And here's another one. Honorary life member, Freedom, Chamber of Commerce, 1984. Oh, that's great.
You tell this.
Yes.
Paid off my wife's doctor and funeral bill, hospital bill, all that Medicare didn't pay,
Yes.
and she had a small supplement insurance policy. I've paid the rest of it.
Well, my granddaughter came over to a rodeo one evening over in this neighborhood about a month or 6 weeks ago. What would that be?
Well, the middle of August, this third weekend in August is our rodeo
Yes, well that,
every year.
uh-huh. Well, it's out on somebody's ranch. What is the name of it?
It's where,
Isn't it out on somebody's ranch?
that's right here at the north edge of town,
Oh, it is.
on the west side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
It's on some other people's property.
Mm-hmm.
The Chamber of Commerce has a lease on it. You can see it from the highway.
Yes. Well, there's you have a big crowd there, and you have a lot of participants.
You
don't
bet we have a big crowd now. It's it's not just the town that puts it on either. They people come from 25 miles around
Yes,
to help us run the concession stands, work the cattle chutes,
yes,
and everything. Everybody in the community pitches in, and we never could put it on.
yes.
That's when my son-in-law's dad was here 2 or 3 years ago, and he said I would never believe the crowd you had if I hadn't seen it.
Well, that's what my granddaughter said. She came over to it last August. Last week in August, I believe.
3rd week.
Yes, 3rd week. She and her boyfriend came over, and she had a big time.
Well,
And she,
it's 47 rodeos that we've had.
mhm.
I've been on the gate every rodeo.
Is that right? Mhm.
When we first started the rodeo, there's 3 ranchers. Well, one of them was a grocerman, he was a Syrian. 3 of them went together and put on the first rodeo. They started at the schoolhouse, had a parade, started at the schoolhouse, came a block south, 2 blocks west, and then north to the rodeo grounds and in.
Mhm.
They were afoot, horseback, in a wagon, a bicycle, or you name it. And the entrance for adults was 35 cents. We stood there, and it was in the daytime at that time.
Mhm.
Stood there and made change for everybody who came through with
Sure.
35 cents. If you think that wasn't fun.
Yes, I imagine.
What about floods on the river down here?
About what?
Floods on the river?
We never been in floods.
You have?
Not from the river. Have from that creek right. It comes in right at the north edge of town. I raised my house up 2 feet from what it was to start with. When I was working at the light plant, my wife and 3 kids with a whooping cough was down here, and the water run in the back door and out the front.
Oh my.
Just enough to make them the scum off the top, and that was a mess to clean up. But that all of those floods none of them come from the river. They came from this little creek right north of town, right at the north edge of town.
Freedom was pretty well then flooded, the whole town.
All this whole thing from here to the river, all of this is underwater south here.
Yes.
There's a baseball triangle right over here. Kids down here one time in a rowboat and rowed there around that thing.
Is that right? Well,
Do you have any old photographs of freedom of the town?
Any what?
Any old photographs of the town of freedom?
I don't have any that I know of. If there was, I wouldn't know where to find them. I don't know of any. I know I've got some, but I don't have the least idea where to find them of some of them high waters. I came home, started home from the light plant at 4 o'clock one morning. And north of this first elevator here, walked into the water in the street, run back to the light plant, left my watch. I had a good watch and billfold, stuff like that. Anything like that I didn't want to get wet. Left them down there with the old man that was running the light plant with me. And came back down here, and I was out here in the road with a flashlight. And I flashed it through the windows. And my wife saw it, and the light, and opened the door, and we had to holler just as loud as we could talk to make each other hear. That ditch right out there get mighty swift. I told her to stay in here. In the house with her and the kids, I'd watch it. Started getting any higher, I'd be in after them. Used to be a sand hill right here west, and I could get them out on that. I had a little cellar right here at the north or southwest corner of the house. It just rocked up with rocks. Wood top with dirt on it, just a place to put her can stuff when she canned things. That darn thing was full of water. Jars fall off and bust and floating. So when the water went down, I started dipping it out. And there's pictures of me here somewhere that she took me dipping that water out with a bucket. About 10 o'clock or something like that, she wanted me to go to the store and get something for dinner. So I did. When I got back to the railroad track up here, the whole darn thing is underwater again. The cellar filled up. So I said, well, I'm going to wait till the flood's over before I go to all that work. I went to work just about 10 minutes till 4. Walked across this bottom over to the light plant. 15 or 20 minutes after I got the light plant, the darn thing was all underwater again. That's 3 times in less than 24 hours.
Well, what year was that? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
Who discovered the Alabaster Caverns?
I don't know.
You don't know the history of?
No, it was way before my time.
I thought maybe you might have been over there and.
Oh, I've been through that thing, I expect 100 times.
Yes.
Used to go through there with kerosene. Well, they called it as a torch. End gate rod out of a wagon box with a gunny sack wrapped on the end of it. Pour kerosene on it and light the torch and carry a can of kerosene with us to renew it after we got in there a while. We went through it at flashlights. I knew the people that homesteaded the land. Different ones bought the land since then, and finally the state bought it.
Who homesteaded it?
Hugh Litton.
Did he know it was there?
I imagine he did. I don't know. 'Cause I don't know how he keeps running. We used to go over there, young people go over there every once in a while in the summertime. Go through the thing. Old school.
Did they have tours, guides?
They do now.
Are all the rooms open? Do you know?
No, they haven't got, they've more places in there than they've got lit up yet. There's been, back years ago, of an evening when the bats started coming out of that thing, it was just like a big cloud in the sky. Well, when they's coming out of there. They've been 4 or 5 anyway, different individuals that's owned that land before the state bought it.
Yes. Did you have any tornadoes over here or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. They was one tore up things right out here about a mile east of Freedom, and then that big Woodward tornado went across down here about 4 miles, I guess, southeast of Freedom.
Do very much damage?
Not here in Freedom.
No, but where it passed through.
Yeah. Yeah, wherever it went, it tore things all up. I was sitting in the car right south of the house when it crossed 64 up there where the High Line is.
Did you see the funnel cloud?
What?
Did you see the tornado?
No, didn't know anything about it till the next day. One of my daughters had gone up to the church. It started raining like the dickens, and I went after her then to bring her home. I never got wet. She got plenty wet coming to the car after I got up there and drove up out here by the house. And I said, well, I'm gonna stay in here. I'm dry. No use me getting out and getting wet. She came home to the house and she hadn't been in there over 3 or 4 minutes till the lights went out, and that's when it crossed 64 and tore the High Line all down.
Did it kill anybody?
I don't think that it did. As it went across the country, I don't remember of anyone. It did down to Woodward, got a few, but not very many considering everything. That's the worst destruction I ever saw in my life.
Did you go to Woodward to see it?
Yeah.
What did it look like?
Well, these things tore all to pieces. There might be a house sitting here, and on both sides of it, everything tore all to pieces, and that sitting there wasn't even damaged. Well, my boss at the light plant, his brother owned the feed yard down there. And it, of course, tore it all up, all the electricity and the electric wires and everything. So I think it was 2 days after the thing was tore up that he and I and another fella went down there to rewire that for his brother. The only reason we got in was because we were going in to help get things back to going. And after we quit work the first evening, he drove around town a little what he could. I never saw such a mess. It was 2 weeks before they'd let anybody in to mount anything unless they had some reason to be there. So my wife and kids, I think both son-in-laws. I think the youngest daughter was married then. Anyway, we went down there. Usually on Sunday afternoon, when a bunch of young folks are together, they're always laughing and cutting up and hooping and hollering and raising Cain. There wasn't any of them that even had a smile on their face. Just staring at that stuff, walking down past it. There wasn't nobody had any smiling or any laughing or cutting up to do down there. It was really shattered.
They were probably shocked at what
Yeah.
destruction they were looking at.
Well, it was a mess. It was 2 weeks after the tornado went through before they'd let the public in.
We didn't go down for 2 weeks because we kept hearing that they weren't letting people in.
Well, like
And
I
what
said,
I saw was bad enough after 2 weeks.
if it hadn't have been from my boss's brother owning that feed yard down there, we wouldn't have got in.
Yeah.
I got in to see it about as quick as anybody else did. Yeah, it went through down here and tore up several houses on across 64 Northeast.
How far did it go up in Kansas before it finally?
I don't know. It got up pretty well towards Hartner, I think. It was about 5 miles north of 64, where I later went up and rewired the house that they was repairing, that the tornado had torn up. Well, I never was scared of storms.
Not until that one happened, huh?
I never was, not yet.
Oh, you're not?
Never had any place to go when I was a kid at home. Never had any here. The oldest daughter and her husband bought this place right west here. I built as good a cellar as there is in town. I've only got one eye.
Oh, is that right?
That's right. I lost it when I was 48 years old.
Well, in an accident?
We got a piece of steel in it.
Oh.
And I can't tell much about anything after night, and I was really lost because that right eye is the only one I found out that I ever used, depended on it about altogether. And the storm would come up, and here would come all my kids, Mom, and they'd hit the cellars, had me running down there. The next spring, I said, if you guys want to go to the cellar, go. I'm no rat. I'm not going to run on a hole in the ground every time a cloud comes up. Because I wasn't raised that way. Dad wasn't afraid of storms, and he calmed the rest of us down, I reckon.
Mm-hmm.
Up until then, 2 daughters were living up in some other part of town. Be storming, and raining, and thundering, and lightning, and quite a bit of wind. I'd be sitting over there in a chair reading the paper. Pretty soon the front door would open and in come 2 young fellows and their wives. Come down here. I said, what in the dickens you come down here for? Ain't no place down here if you're scared of a storm. I ain't got no cellar. No place to go. But they just felt a little more secure on here. I said, we'd get pitch deck and start playing cards. Forget about the blame storm.
Your confidence in being safe probably helped them to not be afraid. Well, can you think of anything more?
No, I don't know of anything any bigger than the rodeo.
After we leave, why, you'll think of a lot of things probably.
I expect.
Well, we sure thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Sample, and it's been nice meeting you.
Do you live in Laverne?
No, I live in Woodward.
In Woodward.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe you might have lived in Laverne by knowing Raymond and Mary.
I lived out by Slap Out. You know where Slap Out is?
Yeah.
And our church membership was in Laverne, and we always went to Laverne to do our shopping. You know, Mother and Dad lived there, and we'd always go in, and I'd see them and visit them. And I knew a lot of people in Laverne.
Did you know the Loves?
Yes. Which ones do you know?
Well, I don't remember their names. They and my wife was the same church members.
First Baptist.
Well, I don't know what they didn't call them. It's non-denominational.
Oh.
You know Fern Myers and Woodward?
I've met her. I don't know her very well yet.
Mighty nice lady.
Yes.
She lost her husband to cancer several years ago.
There's some old photographs right here.
Oh, they are. He's going through your pictures.
I expect it. I can't tell from here what it is. Well, that's some of my relation.
That isn't your folks, that is your parents?
No. Don't see either one of them.
Here, I want you to look at these. I'd have these hanging on my wall. Right up there is a good place. You tell your daughter you want these to hang up on the wall.
Some of the people here in town wants me to take them up to the museum, and I told them nothing doing.
You have a museum here in Freedom?
Yeah.
We saw a sign up there. It said Cimarron, what was it?
Cimarron.
Cowboy Monument.
Yeah.
2 blocks north.
East.
East.
East. We went north.
Yeah, the arrow's pointing east, not north, I guess.
I guess I'm turned around in this
Yeah.
town.
What
Well,
are
what is it that we'd see if we'd gone up there?
Just a big marble monument in the park, and
What's this old service station? What's it? Is that here in Freedom?
yeah. Finally get it figured out. It's all closed in now. It's not been hadn't been a station for a long time. They've boarded all of this up and got office rooms in there. Yeah, that's the old hand gas pumps. Pumped them up by hand.
Who ran the service station?
Jim Guthrie to start with. And the co-op finally bought it. Here's one of my school pictures in the early day. That's the schoolhouse out there, the 2 rooms. There's my wife right there.
She's the 1, 2, 4th from the right. Which one are you?
Well, don't you see it?
Right there. This your wife right here? Right here?
I gotta get turned around. I got no eye on that side.
Yeah.
Could you get a picture?
Yeah, 4th one.
And this is you right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
When we were just kids going to grade school.
Get a picture of that.
Oh, I lost a lot of my pictures I had. I expected I had a wash tub full of pictures. I had them all together.
What happened to him?
I never did know.
Here's 2 beautiful girls. Who are they?
That one there'd be a thumb to my wife.
Oh. And the other one?
That was a friend of hers.
A friend. Well, they're very pretty girls, both of them.
Well, I guess that's it.
Yes. Unless you can think of something else.
Oh, it wouldn't be nothing, only a bunch of foolishness.
Well, that's fun.
Things that happened.
Like what?
Oh, we had that first schoolhouse. When school first started, they had school in, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different places. Some of them were residence houses, an old cafe. You'd have maybe 2 or 3 grades one place and 2 or 3 another. The big building that we had, the high school was in the north half and the 7th and 8th grade in the south half, the partition in it. And they built the schoolhouse up there. It's not the one that's there now. They tore it all down. It had better brick in it than the new one. Because the contractor told me that way. He said there's a lot better brick we're taking out of there than what we can put back.
Well.
But in these sand hills, it's whipped out till there's pockets in there, and that's where they built that. They didn't even have to do much digging to get a basement. And then they had what they call community day. Everybody in the district, they turned out school. The women brought a basket lunch for noon, and the men brought teams and horses and Fresnos, scrapers, wagons, and what have you, and hauled dirt and put that sand in around the schoolhouse, and then hauled hard dirt and put on top of it. Done that for 3 or 4 years. There might be a couple, 300 people up there on that community day. So, some of the boys, one thing when I was a young buck, they didn't back me out on anything. I don't care what it was. One year, they had the library was up in the, on the south side. One young fellow jumped out the library window just to make his sweetie squall. And she did. Well, it got around to me, and I said, well, he ain't the only one can jump out that window. Well, there was this concrete step out right straight down. I got up there, and I jumped out the blame thing, but I never missed that edge of that, catching my heels on that over 3 inches. If I'd have done it, probably broke both legs.
Yeah.
But he'd made the remark that if anybody jumped out there, he's going to jump off the north side of the schoolhouse, which was 6 or 8 feet higher. Well, after I jumped out, he lost his nerve. He never did jump off there because he knew darn well I'd followed him. And just that foolishness of that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't back up for nothing whenever somebody else would banner me to do something. Well, they just well get going because I'd be right behind them.
Yes.
And then one time when my son and daughters were going to school, I was working out northwest, out in the country doing some wiring or painting, I don't remember, but they had part of them skip school, and part of the class that went out and went through the alabaster caverns. They had quite a little stink stirred up around here when I was at home that evening, and I happened to stop up there in the middle of the street. They told me about it, and they said, was Larry in it? I said, I don't know, I haven't been home yet, but I tell you one thing now, if I get home and find out that he wasn't going to be one of the bunch, he's going to get his butt blistered. And I meant just that. I wanted him to be just like Dad, go along with the crowd. Didn't make a difference what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I was pretty sure I was in safe territory, and he was with them. Oh, there's all kinds of that kind of stuff going on around here.
Well, I want to thank you.
I want to thank you too for listening to us.
Well, don't show anybody any pictures.
Oh.
No, I have enjoyed life. Of course, it's had its ups and downs. I don't know of anybody that hadn't. Even back there in the 30s when I could buy that smoking tobacco for a nickel a sack, 14 cents an hour didn't go very far raising the family. With a lot of sickness, my wife had a lot of sickness. I'd think, well, when I have a couple, $3 left this month, I can call mine. And somebody gets sick, and our doctor that we doctored with was in Moreland.
Last thing we need your signature on that top line up there. That's our release that'll let us use the tape for the museum.
You give us a good history of freedom and the surrounding territories, and we'd like to use it in our museum there at the state capitol.
Well, I wish I was up to the bank. I'd get a copy of that.
We can send you a copy.
They got copy machines up there. Wouldn't cost me nothing to get it done right quick. Well, I'll write my name out. I'll sign my initials, sign my signature, just initial.
All right, your full name.
Yeah, that makes me think when you're going to do that. One time, my wife tormented the life out of me for several years. Somebody came from the Daily Oklahoman. I was still working for the town, and they wanted an interview, just like you folks, from the Daily Oklahoman. He was asking me questions. I don't know if we had what we had here for law officers. I said, we don't have any, we don't need them. We're all law-abiding citizens. And went on talking. Pretty soon I said, buddy, you can do anything you're big enough to do in freedom. And that crazy hoodlum went and put it in the paper, and just what I put on it. And the people there in the town, of course, reading the paper got a hold of it. My wife told me, I said, that was an awful mistake, an awful statement to make. You can do anything in freedom is big enough, but I guess that's about what it's been most of the time. We don't have any law officers.
You don't today?
No.
How do you like living in freedom?
I don't know of any place else any better.
This is home, isn't it?
Several years ago, 15 years ago, my wife kind of got the blues about something, I don't know what. She was ready to get out of freedom. I said, I don't know where you'd go. Be any better. Yeah, I said, I reckon you just live and die right here. And I said, I don't know of any better place. And I still don't. They've all got their drawbacks. I don't care where they are.
I'm curious, Mr. Sample, what are these bells for that you got up here?
Well, I had 2 greenhouses. I quit using the small one. And I made the thermostat on the other end of them out of the wafer out of an incubator. You know what them are. And the points out of an old toaster or something like that. And my fire would go out there and go to getting so cold, I'd set them with a thermometer inside and outside. I've got them set where I want them, about 75 degrees. If they got below that, it turned one of them bells on, and all I had to do was see which one was ringing, and I knew which direction to go to see what the matter with the fire.
Well, that's an idea.